Gerard John Schaefer, 1972 to 1973, Florida. The Badge and the Mask. Hit that subscribe button before we dive in, because this isn't just another true crime story. This one proves that sometimes the most dangerous monsters wear a badge. It began like any other humid morning in Martin County, Florida. The kind of morning where the heat clings to your skin before the sun even rises. Sheriff's Deputy Gerard John Schaefer adjusted his mirrored sunglasses as he pulled his patrol car onto a dirt road near Hutchinson Island. He looked like the perfect picture of authority. Crisp uniform, clean badge, and a calm smile that made people trust him instantly. But behind that smile, something darker was growing. For months, local residents had whispered about young women going missing. College students, hitchhikers, secretaries, all vanishing without a trace. It was the early 1970s, and Florida's coastal highways were full of travelers chasing freedom. Nobody thought danger would come from the man sworn to protect them. That morning, two teenage girls, Nancy and Susan, were walking along a quiet road toward the beach when a patrol car slowed beside them. The deputy inside smiled and offered them a ride, saying the highway was too dangerous to walk on. His uniform, his car, and his tone made it impossible to say no. But instead of taking them toward the beach, he turned off onto a remote sand trail lined with mangroves and whispering palms. The laughter in the car faded as the road narrowed. When the car stopped, he calmly told them he wanted to teach them a lesson about safety. What followed was confusion, fear, and betrayal. He tied them to a tree, left them stranded in the middle of the brush, and drove away, promising he'd be back soon. But what he didn't know was that his carefully crafted facade was about to crack. Hours later, while Fear was still on duty, the girls managed to free themselves and stumbled through the mangroves until they reached a nearby highway. A passing driver stopped, horrified by their state. By evening, the story reached the sheriff's office, and to everyone's shock, the man they described matched one of their own deputies. When officers arrived at Schaefer's house, he opened the door calmly, still in uniform. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, a training exercise gone wrong. But investigators found inconsistencies everywhere: the location, the timing, and the victim's detailed descriptions. He was arrested that night. For most people, that should have been the end of it. A cop gone too far, maybe a strange power trip. But for detectives, something about the case didn't sit right. The girls weren't the first to vanish along the same roads Schaefer patrolled. He'd been reported before: minor complaints, strange behavior, accusations that never stuck because of his badge. As police searched his home, they found something that made their blood run cold. Hidden inside a closet were personal belongings, jewelry, diaries, photos, from women who were never seen again. That discovery opened a floodgate. Detectives across Florida started comparing notes. Missing persons cases suddenly had a common thread, all from counties where Schaefer had previously worked. He wasn't just a cop who crossed a line. He was a predator with a badge. The media went wild. Local newspapers called him Florida's Blue Nightmare. Residents who once waved at him on patrol were now terrified to leave their homes. As Schaefer sat in his jail cell awaiting trial, he maintained his innocence. But in interviews, he spoke with a strange arrogance, calm, controlled, and disturbingly proud. "I'm smarter than them," he told one reporter. "I know how they think." For investigators, it became clear Schaefer hadn't just been hiding behind the law. He had been using it. Every traffic stop, every safety warning, every friendly patrol had been a mask for something far darker. When detectives returned to the mangrove area where the girls escaped, they searched deeper into the brush. And what they found turned their suspicions into certainty. Buried beneath the sandy soil were bones and personal effects belonging to other women. The press descended on Florida. Every headline screamed betrayal. Deputy turned predator. Monster in uniform. Trust shattered in Martin County. It was no longer a small-town scandal. It was a national story. A chilling reminder that sometimes evil doesn't hide in the shadows. It hides in plain sight, waving from a patrol car. Schaefer's arrest sparked investigations that stretched beyond Florida. Letters began arriving from families across the country, all with missing daughters who had last been seen near a man driving a patrol car. But the real horror was just beginning. When officers searched Schaefer's writing desk, they discovered dozens of notebooks filled with stories. At first, they looked like fiction. Twisted tales of control, captivity, and murder written in cold, vivid detail. But as detectives read further, they realized they weren't stories at all. They were confessions, disguised as art. And one notebook was titled, False Faces. Inside, he had written about a man who wore a badge, who taught lessons to young women, and who enjoyed watching them disappear. The stories were detailed, too detailed. Dates, locations, and descriptions matched unsolved cases stretching back years. That's when investigators realized Gerard Schaefer wasn't a man who'd snapped. He was a man who'd been planning, perfecting, and hiding in plain sight for years. As one detective said later, he wasn't just playing the part of a cop. He was playing the part of God. And when the courtroom doors opened for his trial in 1973, no one in Florida would ever look at a sheriff's badge the same wild I again. The stories in the cell. Smash that subscribe button now, because what happens next will make you question how far the mind of a so-called genius can twist reality. When Gerard John Schaefer went to trial in 1973, he was no longer wearing his badge, but he carried himself as if he still held authority. Clean-cut, composed, and eerily polite, he smiled when the prosecution read the charges: kidnapping, assault, attempted murder. The courtroom was tense, not just because of what he had done, but because of who he had been. A cop. Someone people trusted with their safety. The press filled every bench, notebooks open, cameras clicking. The public couldn't believe it. A sheriff's deputy, accused of crimes that sounded more like the plot of a horror film than the actions of a man in uniform. But the witnesses were real. The victims were real. And when the two young women who had escaped him took the stand, their trembling voices painted a chilling picture of a man who enjoyed control more than justice. The prosecution showed the jury the physical evidence: rope fibers, handcuffs, and the items found hidden in Schaefer's closet. Jewelry that didn't belong to him. Photographs of young women no one could identify. And then came the writings. The courtroom fell silent as prosecutors read excerpts from Schaefer's notebooks, the same ones found in his home. The stories were written in cold, precise detail. He described training exercises, obedience tests, and corrections that mirrored real-life crimes almost perfectly. To the jury, it was as if he had documented his own sins and signed them in ink. His attorney tried to argue that the writings were fiction, the creative fantasies of a misunderstood writer. But even the defense couldn't explain why so many of the fictional women in his stories matched actual missing persons. When the verdict came, the courtroom erupted. Schaefer was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. But for Florida, it was only the beginning of understanding what he had done. Behind the walls of Florida State Prison, Schaefer became something strange, a celebrity of crime. He started writing letters to journalists, authors, and even professors, bragging about his intelligence. He claimed he'd been framed, that he'd played the system to make fools of everyone. He called his writings literary masterpieces. Investigators called them confessions disguised as fiction. In one of his prison stories, a narrator described taking a pair of girls to a secluded spot and teaching them discipline. It sounded disturbingly close to the story of the two women who escaped him. Another story detailed a game played in the Florida woods, one that ended with the victims never being seen again. The FBI began re-examining unsolved cases across Florida and neighboring states. Schaefer's name appeared again and again. Traffic stops, witness sightings, patrol logs that placed him near disappearance zones. What terrified investigators most wasn't just the crimes themselves, it was his attitude. He didn't see himself as a killer. He saw himself as superior, a man correcting others for their mistakes. In one interview, he said, "I was just cleaning up the garbage no one else would touch." Even seasoned detectives found his calmness chilling. They couldn't decide if he was delusional or just deeply cruel. As word of his crime spread, people began to send him letters. Some expressed disgust, others, disturbingly, sent admiration. It was the 1970s, the dawn of the serial killer fascination era, and Schaefer loved the attention. He responded to fan mail with essays and handwritten notes filled with quotes like, "You think I'm the only one like me? There are hundreds. They just haven't been caught." Forensic psychologists studying his case described him as one of the most manipulative minds ever to wear a badge. He didn't just enjoy power, he weaponized it. But prison walls have a way of revealing cracks. Inmates who lived near Schaefer began telling guards that he couldn't stop talking about his past projects. Some of the things he said matched unsolved cases, missing girls whose families had never found answers. When investigators searched his old patrol areas again, they uncovered more evidence, remains, possessions, and patterns. Each discovery added weight to the theory that the crime stretched far beyond what was proven in court. The number whispered in law enforcement circles was chilling, more than 130 potential victims. But proving it was another story. The only clues were his writings. Twisted short stories filled with arrogance and disdain for the people he'd hurt. He would even taunt detectives in his letters, saying, "You'll never know how many. That's the beauty of it." Even behind bars, he found ways to keep control over investigators, journalists, even other inmates. He'd manipulate cellmates, writing letters for them, trading favors, collecting secrets. In one particularly disturbing incident, prison staff intercepted a manuscript he'd been working on. It was titled, "Victims Are Forever." Inside were pages describing crimes that hadn't been publicly linked to him. The locations, the methods, even the words he used, all matched real disappearances. It was clear Schaefer wasn't writing to confess. He was writing to relive. By the mid-1970s, his name had become infamous across Florida. The public no longer saw him as just a rogue cop. He was a symbol of betrayal, a reminder that evil doesn't always look like what we expect. And for law enforcement agencies across the country, his case became a warning. Sometimes, the threat doesn't come from outside the system, but from within it. But what no one realized yet was that Schaefer's crimes, and his obsession with writing about them, were far from over. Because even in prison, surrounded by bars and guards, he was still finding ways to get his stories out into the world. And one of those stories would contain something that sent investigators rushing back to his old patrol routes. A story that mentioned a place, a date, and two names that should have been long forgotten. The words that wouldn't die. Hit that subscribe button now, because this final chapter proves that even behind bars, the most dangerous kind of killer isn't the one holding a weapon. It's the one holding a pen. It was 1989 when a Florida journalist received a strange envelope in the mail. No return address, no sender, just a faded prison stamp and a single name typed neatly in the corner. G.J. Schaefer. Inside was a short story titled, "The Everglades Lesson." At first glance, it read like fiction, a tale about a man teaching two runaways a lesson in survival. But halfway through, the tone shifted. The language grew disturbingly specific. The setting matched real Florida marshland coordinates, and the description of the victims sounded hauntingly familiar. The journalist froze. The names, the ages, they matched two real young women who had gone missing in 1970, years before Schaefer's arrest. She turned the pages again, and one line caught her attention. They thought they could escape the law, but the law always finds them first. It wasn't just a story. It was a confession, hidden in plain sight. When the piece reached the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, investigators who had worked the original Schaefer case recognized the pattern immediately. It wasn't the first time he'd written about things only the killer could know. But this was different. The story included new details that had never been released publicly. The letter reignited the investigation. Detectives revisited old case files, searching for links between Schaefer's writings and Florida's unsolved disappearances. Each time they compared his words to the evides, and the overlap was undeniable. And yet, when questioned, Schaefer just smiled through the prison glass. "Writers use imagination," he said softly. "If the truth sounds familiar, maybe it's because you've heard it before." The arrogance hadn't faded with time. If anything, it had deepened. Schaefer saw himself as an artist now. He bragged to interviewers about his literary talent, insisting that he was more misunderstood author than criminal. But what terrified investigators most wasn't his denial. It was that somewhere between the lies and fiction, he might have been telling the truth. The FBI profilers who studied him described his writing as a psychological map, a mix of confession, manipulation, and performance. They believed his stories served one purpose: to keep him in control, even from behind bars. And he succeeded. Publishers of underground crime zines began printing his prison writings. Collectors traded copies of his stories. His name circulated again, not as a criminal, but as a curiosity. The man who blurred the line between fiction and fact. To those who had lost loved ones in Florida's wave of disappearances, it was unbearable. Each new piece he wrote was like reopening a wound that never healed. In 1995, Schaefer shared a cell block with another inmate who would later describe him as obsessed with his own myth. He bragged daily, dropping hints about projects no one ever found. When guards searched his cell, they found pages hidden inside a law book. Short notes detailing women's initials, rough sketches of Florida backroads, and cryptic lines like, "The swamp always keeps its secrets." Authorities couldn't prove whether the notes were real or just his way of staying relevant. Either way, it worked. Even in confinement, he commanded attention. The spotlight he'd always craved. Then, in December 1995, it ended. Schaefer was found dead in his cell, killed during a dispute with another inmate. For many, it felt like closure. But for investigators, it wasn't relief they felt. It was frustration, because with his death, the truth about dozens of missing women likely died with him. In the years that followed, psychologists studied his case to understand what made him so dangerous. It wasn't just that he was violent. It was that he was intelligent, cunning enough to hide behind authority, to manipulate trust, and to turn his crimes into words that would outlive him. A profiler summed it up perfectly. Gerard Schaefer didn't want to kill people. He wanted to own their stories, to decide when they ended. Even decades later, cold case detectives across Florida still find echoes of his signature in files that never closed. Some of his writings remain sealed in evidence rooms, studied but never fully understood. When you walk down the beaches of Hutchinson Island today, it's hard to imagine what once happened there. The sun sets over the water, children laugh in the distance, and the waves erase footprints almost as quickly as they appear. But buried beneath that beauty is the ghost of trust, the kind that was broken by a man who wore a badge and believed it made him untouchable. Schaefer's legacy isn't just one of evil. It's a warning about authority, deception, and how the scariest predators don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes, they stand in plain sight and smile. If you thought this story was disturbing, wait until you hear about the next one. A case where another officer of the law turned an entire town into his hunting ground. Hit subscribe, tap like, and turn on the bell, because the truth we uncover next will make you question everything you think you know about justice. Stay alert, stay aware, and remember, trust should always be earned, never given blindly.